Important concept in algebra is something called function form. It says a two-variable equation is written in function form if one of its variables is isolated on one side of the equation. Another way to think of it, guys, is we want to always solve for, we'll call it y, because y is your dependent variable, so normally our formulas are written as y equals something. So let's look at an example. It says rewrite the equation 2x minus y equals 9 so that y is a function of x. That can get a little confusing when we start talking about y is a function of x. Basically though, we want to solve for y. We want to have something where y equals some type of function here, and we plug in an x and we get out a y value. Okay, so when it says y is a function of x, we mean y equals something. So let's take our equation here and let's solve for y. So we have 2x minus y equals 9. Again, follow our rules for solving equations. What are we solving for? We're solving for y. And please don't forget that if we go keep, change, this is actually a negative y. So if I have to get rid of the 2x, I'm going to subtract it from each side. Our 2x's cancel out. We're left with negative y equals, and you can write this as 9 minus 2x. You could write it as 9 plus a negative 2x. And you could write it as negative 2x plus 9. Okay, because again, commutative property says we can change the order. We want y equals, we have negative y here. Well, there's a couple different ways you can think of this. The easiest way might just be think of that this is like saying there's a negative 1y. And if I wanted to get rid of a negative 1, I would divide both sides by negative 1. Negative 1 divided by negative 1 is 1y. Over here, we have to make sure we divide this whole thing by negative 1. So I have to take 9 and divide it by negative 1, but I also have to take a negative 2x and divide it by negative 1. The whole thing is divided by negative 1. So this becomes y equals negative 9 plus a positive 2x. Okay, or again, you could write 2x plus a negative 9 or 2x minus 9. Okay, but we keep in mind our ultimate goal was to get y by itself, and that's what we did. Okay, let's look at another example. It says rewrite the equation. Oh, we already did that. Sorry. 2x minus y equals 9, so that x is a function of y. I'm sorry. Notice here we have y is a function of x, and here we have x is a function of y. Remember, if it says x is a function of y, we want it to say x equals. So let's take our original equation again, and this time let's solve it for x. So what are we solving for? X. What do we have to get rid of first? Whatever is being added or subtracted on. So let's get rid of the minus y. We can do that by going plus y. Whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. We end up with 2x, these cancel, equals 9 plus y. Almost there. We want x equals, we have 2 times x. So how do we get rid of the 2? By dividing by 2. 2 divided by 2 leaves us with just x. Now, there's a couple ways you could write this. In this case, you really could just leave it as 9 plus y divided by 2. Or you could write it as 9 divided by 2 plus y divided by 2. Okay, and these would be equivalent equations. The reason I kind of like leaving it this original one, because now it says use the results to find x when y equals negative 2, negative 1, 0, and 1. So when y equals negative 2, and we could just create a table if you wanted for this, an input-output table. We're going to input our y values into our function here, 9 plus y divided by 2, and then get out our x values. It looks a little backwards than what we're used to, but again, they want x as a function of y. So if I take negative 2 and plug it in for y, I get 9 plus negative 2 divided by 2. 9 plus a negative 2 is 7, and we can just leave this as 7 divided by 2. Leave myself a little room here. The next number we want to plug in is negative 1. So if I go 9 plus negative 1, that's 8. 8 divided by 2 is 4. Again, ladies and gentlemen, all I'm doing is taking my y values and plugging in there for y. Now I have 0. 9 plus 0 divided by 2. Well, 9 plus 0 is 9, so we can just leave this as 9 divided by 2. And then we have 1. 9 plus 1 divided by 2. 9 plus 1 is 10. 10 divided by 2 is 5. So these would be our solutions. Okay? Please try to remember that when we're solving equations, if it says y is a function of x, that means y equals. We want y equals. If it says x is a function of y or whatever variables, this means x equals. And function form is going to be really important to remember, especially solving for y as we move on in algebra.